Hi everybody, it's Erin from Epapere. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, we are a channel that is dedicated to junk journaling, paper crafting, mixed media, thrifty and vintage treasure hunting, and making sure that you have all of the best tips, tricks, tutorials, hacks, supplies, and tools for your own crafty journey. If that sounds like your jam, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so that you always know when we release new videos. So this is video 3 in my color theory for junk journaling, paper crafting series. So if you missed the last video, I will go ahead and link that in the description. I'm gonna also put together a playlist of that one so that you can just watch the whole mini course from start to finish. Make sure you download the guide from our website. That's www.designedbyepapere.com. All right, let's get started. This is going to be a robust one today. So in the last video, I introduced you to the color wheel that we're using. We discussed some terminology. If you missed that, please go ahead and watch the first video. We also discussed a monochromatic color harmony, and we made this tag. Okay, so we're going to move on to more complex color harmonies today. So what is a color harmony? Color harmonies are aesthetically pleasing combinations of colors based on known formulas. This is where the science comes into the art. These are tried and true combinations. They just always work. So we're going to walk through them today because there are, believe it or not, 6 different color harmonies that you can use to create your color palette. So we went through monochromatic. I'm going to bring out that tag again. Monochromatic is choosing one hue around the color wheel. So one color, one hue, and taking that hue plus its shades, tints, and tones of that same hue and creating a color palette from that. So this is an example of a monochromatic color palette. The next one down my list is complementary. So complementary is two hues that are positioned opposite each other on the color wheel, and then additional shades or tints and tones of those hues can be added for variety. This type of color palette is going to give you a strong contrast. This is going to pop, okay? So in this example that I've used on the guide, we've got our marker here at green, and we've got a marker over here at magenta. Green and magenta on this color wheel are complements, and you'll see that that example is over here on the guide as well. Okay. Now, if you're used to working with the traditional color wheel, the one that uses red, green, and blue as its primary colors, those complementary colors do also work. So you can work from either color wheel, but these are the ones that our eyes actually see. And there was an experiment. I'll see if I can find the YouTube video. There's an experiment that you could do where you actually, see it on the screen, where you stare at something for a while and then they kind of turn it off and just give you a white screen, and then your eyes see the complementary colors. And believe it or not, these are the real deal. The other ones still work in terms of putting together color palettes, but this is what our eyes actually see as complementary colors. So interesting fact. The next color harmony that we have is called a split complementary. So it's like a complementary color harmony, but it's going to take the complement. So in this case, we've still got magenta up here, but instead of using green, we've just split it and taken the two colors on either side of the complement. So it includes the base hue, in this case magenta, that appears on either side, plus the 2 hues that appear on either side of that base hue's complement. Additional shades, tints, and tones of those hues can be added for a variety. A split complementary color keeps the high contrast of that regular complementary, but it adds additional variety. So again, I have taken all these. I haven't used the labels, but you can refer back to this color wheel if you need to figure out kind of, you know, what the labels are, but you can see at a glance which color, you know, all of the colors and their split, you know, complementary relationships. Okay. So again, it's one base hue, and then you go across the wheel and then take the 2 colors either side of that. Okay. So in this case, we've got magenta, and we've got yellow green and cyan green. And that particular one is right here. Okay. Triadic. This is 3 hues that are evenly spaced around the wheel like a triangle. Additional shades, tints, and tones of the base hues can be added for variety. A triadic color palette is bold and vibrant. So this is where we're going to see our primary colors, cyan, magenta, and yellow. Here they are right here, 1, 2, 3, evenly spaced. It makes a triangle. Okay. If we spin the wheel, we also get red, green, and blue. We can get orange, cyan, green, and violet, and blue, cyan, red, magenta, and yellow, green. Those are the 4 triadic color harmony color palettes as you work around the wheel. Okay. And again, you don't have to go with those like super saturated ones. You mix and match with the tones and the tints, and I'll show you examples when we get in. Tetradic. So now we're making a rectangle with our colors. Okay, so we've got 4 markers here. We've got 2 up here and 2 down here. It makes a rectangle. Interestingly, if you'll notice that this hue and its complementary hue are part of the rectangle, and then you pop over 2, right? And this hue and its complementary hue are part of this particular color palette. So that's how we make that. Okay, it's 2 complementary. So 4 hues that appear in a rectangle shape on the color wheel, which are 2 sets of complementary colors. A tetradic palette can easily look chaotic, and it's best to use 1 or 2 hues as the dominant colors and the others as accents. So I think, you know, a best practice, and I'll go through best practices in the next video, but a best practice, the more hues you're adding to your color palette, hues meaning positions around the wheel, the more you want to meter how much you're using. You want to definitely make sure that some of them are used in much larger proportions and some of them are used as just tiny little pops of color. That way it doesn't overwhelm our eyes and our brain. Okay, so there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tetradic color harmonies, and the final color harmony, this is actually, I think I use this one more often than any other, and that's the analogous. That's 2 to 4 hues that are immediately adjacent on the color wheel. An analogous palette is one of the simplest and most appealing. These are very easy to put together. They're very relaxing. They're easy to match things, you know, different supplies and materials too, because you know, when you're working with 4 hues and something kind of falls in between one of these, it's still going to fit within the palette. So it's one of the easiest to work with. And I find analogous palettes very, very easy to work with and very pleasing to the eye. So I do tend to work with these a lot. You'll notice I tend to use kind of yellow and green a lot. I use green and blue a lot. Those kind of tend to be my wheelhouse. So yeah, anyway. So those are the color harmonies that we are working with. I'm going to bring my sheets back out, and I'm going to show you some real paper examples that we're going to use to make some projects. Here is our complementary palette that I've put together with some papers. So this is a red magenta shade, or well, it's tints and shades and hues, tones. This is definitely reaching cyan. And then I pulled also kind of a, neutral, and then, but it's got this cyan colored area on this paper that just to demonstrate that, remember to add interest. And this is already full of interest because it's got a lot of texture and variation of color just right in the paper. But reminder to add interest by utilizing the shades, tints, and tones of the hues that you've selected to increase the number of colors in your palette. Okay, so that is our complementary color palette. So I'm gonna grab a tag base for that. Our next one is our split complementary. So in this case, I chose another inky paper with our split complementary palette that I'm working with. This time is orange, blue, and cyan. Okay, so we've got some cyan running through here. These bricks are orange on the palette, and we've got all sorts of tones and shades of orange in here. And then I have pulled a navy in this pattern, which is a shade of blue. So it's the darker shade of blue. Okay, that is a split complementary. Now, incidentally, orange and blue on the traditional color wheel, the old one that you may have used in elementary school, are complementary colors. Okay, and this probably would count as blue if you're using that color palette or color wheel. So either way, it kind of works. Triadic. This case, I found one piece of paper that I'm using. I may need to pull some other stuff in. I think I'm using cyan and a couple of other ones, but in this one I'm using cyan, magenta, and yellow, and I happened to find that color palette in a single piece of paper. As you get to these more sophisticated color harmonies, that's where your prints often come in. And that's another tip for you. If you're looking for a color palette, find a printed paper that includes several colors and pull your palette directly from that. Okay, so here we see we have a tint of yellow. It's a lighter yellow. We've got magenta pinks throughout, and we've got cyan in the background. Now we do also have green, but it's a botanical. You expect to see green. Tetradic. We are working with this one, yellow, green, and violet, cyan green, and red magenta. So I happen to find, again, pretty much this entire color palette in one print. So if we look really carefully, this shade or this particular color right here is a shade of red magenta, as is the background. That is a tint of red magenta. Okay, these are, let's see, yeah, these are violet, in the violet family. And we've got our green and our yellow green. Cyan green, sorry. So this one cheats a little bit more towards regular green, but it was close enough. And then I just pulled this one as just an extra paper to go with it, but that is, again, it's a shade of violet. Okay, analogous. Again, that's my favorite. So I've grabbed some papers. I've got an olive green, which is going to be a yellow green. I've got yellow greens and green greens and cyan greens in here, and I've got yellows in here. So we're kind of working from yellow to cyan green. So it's pretty much this one right here. So I have got a lot of tags to make. I will probably employ some speeding up of these videos in order to, you know, get through these within a decent amount of time, but that, you know, is the gist of what we're doing and how I put those color palettes together. Yeah, so let's just get started, and if I run into anything that needs more explanation, I will chime in with that. Oh, chiming in quickly. As in the last video, book page is going to be considered just a neutral. So, yeah, creams, whites, blacks, and grays are going to be considered neutrals, and we'll go with any color palette in this case. So, all right, now we're going to get started. So I realized while I was editing this video that the camera had stopped while I was working on this final tag for analogous colors. I apologize that the rest of the process wasn't visible on the video, but here is the finished tag. And then I wanted to just go through one final time the rest of the tags that I made, because I did go back and kind of just, you know, tweak them a little bit, zhuzh them up a little bit. So this is the analogous colors tag. This is monochromatic. So I went back in here, I did some stamping in red, I put some additional papers down that were kind of in you know, reds, blacks, whites, tans, put some people on here and some trim, some lace, some red ribbon. So that's that one. Complementary colors. I added one of our, these are available in the shop. These are slow stitched words on fabric. And then just a little topper with some trim. This one is the split complementary. So I wanted to bring more of the navy into the composition. So I added a navy bow and a navy ribbon topper. Here is the triadic one, and on this one all I did was just added a yellow ribbon topper to bring more of that yellow into the tag. And then this one is the one I probably did the most work on off camera. This one is the tetradic composition. This one I used my watercolors to go around and accent each of the pieces to just kind of bring everything out a little bit more, add a little bit of grunge, and then I added a green ribbon and some lace as a topper for that tag. So there you go. These are all of the tags that we made, representing all of the different color harmonies in, you know, real life instead of just color wheel land. So I hope you enjoyed this video on the color harmonies. Give us a thumbs up if that's the case, and I hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel. We have one more video on color theory coming up where I will teach you kind of my guidelines for if you want to take it a step a little bit further, walk on the wild side with me a little bit, if you will. So stay tuned for that one. I'll see you next time. Bye.